My family actually didn't really choose Orlando. We didn't have much of a choice. My grandparents, Sam and Penny Jones, actually developed an entire community called Jonestown. It's over near Westmoreland and what is now Greenwood Cemetery. Okay. And that was originally the property of the Joneses. They were forced to move there, but my family made a commitment to stay because we were hoping that we would still have a chance to share in some of the ownership or at least be able to move back. So our roots are grounded in Orlando from the time my great-grandparents saw and loved the area, which is so pretty off of South Westmoreland and off of South Street. So they were the parents of my grandparents, and Arthur Jones was my grandfather, and Richard Arthur Jones, my father. So we vowed to have many generations right here in Orlando, and we did. I have very early memories of Orlando. Yes, I was born in Orlando, and the house in which I was born is still standing, not that far from downtown. I was here before the mouse. I have visions, beautiful visions of Orlando being major orange grove or fruit growing territory. We used to drive to Clearmont to the tower to observe hundreds of miles of beautiful greenery and beautiful groves. And there was a time when we would drive through Orlando and that's all we would see, would be orange groves. When I went to college in 1965 at Clark Atlanta University, no one ever heard of Orlando. We told them we live east of Tampa, north of Miami. But when we said Orlando, they go, or who? And by the time I graduated in 1968, everyone had heard of Orlando because Disney World had opened and had become famous. But I lived in Orlando at its very, very beginnings, and that part of town that I lived in was like a little village. And we were very close, but it was a very, very quiet town. We didn't have a whole lot to do, but my friends and I, we'd go to the movies, and my girlfriends and I, we would play a lot outside. We had no technology. That word did not even exist. So we played with dolls. There was a swing set in my front yard, and we used to play with that. We played hopscotch and jump rope and rode our bicycles and skated. So we did a lot outside, but we didn't go a whole lot because there really wasn't that much of a social life for blacks in the late 40s and early 50s. Well, of course, school, and we walked to school. And after school, there was homework, and we would play. We created our play, though. We played in the dirt. We played, used to play school, and that's how I became interested in working in the school system. We would teach all afternoon our own creative school, and then on Saturdays, we would do housework, and then we liked to cook. My mom loved to cook. So almost every Saturday and Sunday, we would try new recipes and cook. And in our little neighborhood, we used to share our recipes, and we'd have little baking parties. Those would be some of the worst cookies and brownies and cakes ever, but we enjoyed them because we made them and we had fun. That was a typical day. My community was very, very small, and we were extremely close. As a matter of fact, it was common for me to have breakfast at my house or lunch in somebody else's house or dinner at someone else's house. Just on our street, we were very close. As a matter of fact, we didn't even lock our doors during the day. We were in and out of each other's homes just like we all lived together. Most of the workers were common day workers, so they were gone a lot. But we looked out for each other. Everyone looked out for everyone else's kids. And so we knew that discipline was a community thing. We were truly a village. It was easy to go next door and borrow some sugar or a stick of butter. We didn't even ask. We just go in the next door neighbor's refrigerator and say, hey, I'm getting a cup of sugar, I'm getting some milk. And they say, okay, and you just did it. We had such a close family relationship. Every Sunday we all went to church. We walked a lot of places, or we caught the bus a lot of places. And we were not rich at all, but we shared a lot. A lot of the workers were grove pickers. They would come through and give out oranges. Then there were people that sold fruit. There were fruit trucks and vegetable trucks. We had fresh vegetables all of the time. So we were sharing a lot and entertaining a lot together, spending a lot of time. We would sit out on the front porch and talk, not a whole lot. TV was entered early 50s on our street, and that was exciting. Once we got TVs, then there wasn't so much time on the front porch because we were in our homes looking at the one station that we had at the time. So we shared a lot. We were very close. We spent a lot of time together, and to this day, we're still communicating and still taking care of each other, even though we are many miles, even counties apart. The roots of our growth and our existence still remains. I went to high school at Jones High School. At that time, it was the only high school that blacks could attend. So everybody knew everybody in most of Orlando at Jones High School. And at the time, it was #1 in the state. We were #1 in band, we were #1 in choir, we were #1 academically. We were a strong academic institution, and we were very close. We had so much pride. The Jones High School pride at that time was unbelievable. And everybody wanted to go to Jones because it was a magnificent school. And I'm so proud to have been there right before integration, which changed the boundary lines. The school became a lot smaller for a while, and things changed significantly. But at the time I attended, it was the only school for blacks, and it was strong, it was large, and we did extremely well in everything we attempted to do. I was a social person.
Amazing.
So I was involved in several of the clubs and held an office in each one. And we had a lot of fun. That's where I learned to do a lot of the civic activities. I most enjoyed being a Girl Scout. I started out as brownies, and then we advanced to Girl Scouting. And it was the one place that taught us not only skills, life skills, but also how to work together more closely as a team. And I was so proud to be a Girl Scout and earn my badges. And of course, we sold cookies then, just like we sell now. But I was also in several social clubs at Jones High, and just enjoyed being with my friends, enjoyed making friends, and enjoyed participating in several social activities. We went to restaurants together. They taught us etiquette and manners and social skills. And right before prom, we would dress up, and they taught us makeup techniques and hair and fingernails. We just had lots of fun being girls. When I was not at school, a lot of things I did, believe it or not, I started out reading. And that's where my profound interest in being a librarian started. And when our first Black branch opened, I was there so much, they said, would you like a little job here, a little part-time job? And I said, sure. So our first black branch in the Washington Shores community was at St. John Episcopal Church, and the librarian's name was Betty Chandler, who still lives today. She became a school librarian at the school where I became principal. So I had a lifetime relationship with my librarian, who was my inspiration. There were others there, but I enjoyed reading. I was introduced to reading, and that became my #1 passion. And so when we played school, we would teach reading. And we taught it the way we thought we were supposed to as elementary school teachers. And so we taught reading, but then we actually did do reading, and that became my #1 passion. Our first readers were just basic books, were just plain basic books. But anything by Ezra Scott Keyes was always my #1. I didn't have a real favorite. Judy Blume, we advanced to Judy Blume, but I liked the books where we could make up our own stories. And so we started writing our own books and creating our own stories. And then, of course, we had to act them out. And so we even would have pretend plays, and our parents would watch us and listen to us. I was also a ballerina, so I had to have time for ballet and tap as well. So we were very active and very involved, and so reading and then dancing became my favorites. And so then we had TV and we had record players, and we would play our record players, our 33s on record players, and would dance for hours and read and dance and read. I miss most the quaintness of downtown. When I was growing up, the downtown was loaded with family-owned restaurants and stores for shopping. We used to get all of our new school clothes, our new Easter outfits, our new Christmas clothes from downtown on Orange Avenue. Orange Avenue was loaded with family-owned restaurants and the whole downtown area, and many major stores. There was a Sears and a Penny's and several other dress shops that were located there. So when we did our shopping, we would go downtown. But of course now it's way more business. There's still restaurants there, but downtown is business now. It is truly a business area. Whereas I feel like before it was shopping, and that was before we had malls. I remember when Fashion Square was Colonial Mall, and we had a store called McAlpin's there that we loved to shop in, and that pulled away from downtown. But at first, all of our shopping was downtown, and major restaurants were in the area. I miss that a lot. It's almost hard to even find a parking space downtown. That wasn't a problem when I was a child. So the introduction of the malls, I think, significantly changed the face of downtown. And then, of course, as we grew, everything changed. The traffic patterns changed, everything. So just seeing Orlando grow is what I miss. I'm glad to see Orlando grow because we have so many wonderful new opportunities now. But I also miss the quaintness of downtown and all the small little intimate shops and restaurants that existed at the time. What are my 2 favorite places to go in Orlando? I don't know how I could possibly limit them to 2. However, I seem to spend a lot of time in the Millennia area. I love Millennia. I love all of the theme parks. My granddaughters come and spend every June with me. And we have Disney, SeaWorld, Universal out. We have been to all of them so many times. So we're finally now going to museums and spending more time at Lock Haven and the Science Center. And I'm so glad to see that happen. And I think those are going to be my favorite places now. So where they go is where I like to go, but I love Dr. Phillips. I love going to the plays. I enjoy that. I enjoy eating out as my scales seem to show, but I thoroughly enjoy eating out. I love all types of food, and I'm not allergic to anything, so I go just about everywhere. But I like that section of the section of restaurants on Sand Lake. I live on the west side of town, so it's a section they call Restaurant Row on Sand Lake near Dr. Phillips. I love that area, and I can be found in any of those restaurants on any given day. I love the parks too. Can't forget the parks and the beach. I am excited and thrilled to have a history in the library, particularly Orlando Public Library. As I indicated, I started out with my first job in the summers at the Little Black Branch in Washington Shores and loved it. When I moved to Kentucky for a few years, my job there was a community librarian, and my challenge was to get inner city kids to read, and I was very successful. When I moved back to Orlando, the first place I interviewed was here at the Orlando Public Library and was offered a position and worked here for a while until I needed time with my mother and son. My mother was ill, and then my son needed me as he was starting to go to preschool. I was with so much regret that I had to leave the library from the Orlando Public Library system. However, I became the librarian at Rolling Hills Elementary School. So I was able to transfer my library skills and position from public to public school. And that's where I was able to start my library career. I went to the University of Kentucky on a full scholarship majoring in library science. And so that further interested me in becoming a librarian. At the time, the field was called media. So my degree is in media library science with an emphasis on research. All from the University of Kentucky, 1969-70. And I had no choice but to become involved in the library at that time. So when I became involved in the education system as a librarian and later on as a teacher, my specialty was in reading, of course. And when we learned that how important it was to read to kids at an early age as infants, that was my joy. And when we worked with parents, my job was to emphasize the importance of reading and reading to your children every day from the time they're born throughout. My father, Richard Arthur Jones, was the first Black policeman hired in the city of Orlando, Florida, in January 1951. At the time, he was a waiter at the prestigious Orlando Country Club. And his clients or his customers were the elite of Orlando. It would be many, the mayor, commissioners, many of the public figures and many prestigious lawyers, doctors that frequented the Orlando Country Club. So they got to know him very well. As a matter of fact, he became one of their favorites. He memorized the drinks that they liked, the menu, and so they would say to him, the usual. Arthur, give me the usual. Richard, I'll take the usual. He knew them and they knew him. So when the NAACP decided that it was definitely time to integrate the workforce, they went to the mayors and the top legislators and said, we want a black selected to be the first black policeman, that there was no election held. And they chose my dad because they had established a relationship with him. They knew his temperament, they knew his abilities, they liked working with him, and he was big in stature, so they said he would be the perfect one. And therefore they offered him the opportunity, and of course he accepted. They did not want him to go alone, so they asked him to wait on a second officer. But the Orlando Police Department was not pleased that this was happening. So of course there were major restrictions on their work abilities. They were never issued a gun or a car or a radio, or they were restricted to the areas. So the beginning was a bit rough, and it was expected that they would fail. That's what they were thinking was going to happen. So they said, no point in wasting a lot of time with this. It's not going to be successful. So we'll do it to please the NAACP, and once they see it's not working, we'll be done with this. Well, that didn't happen. And it was very successful, and it grew, and the black community was so pleased to see officers of color be hired, and of course it grew, and then it became fair in the job responsibilities and opportunities. My dad went on to be the first sergeant and then the first lieutenant. So we're real proud of Richard Arthur Jones. I have memories, I have wonderful memories of my father. He had the night shift. He worked the night shift. He was not privy to the day shift almost the entire time he worked. And so during the day, my father slept, and that was his time, the only time he could sleep. And he would get up a bit in the afternoon, and then he'd go back to sleep a little later on. But I wanted to be involved, and so my job every night was to prepare his shirts. There was an exact way his shirts had to be worn. The badge had to go on one side, and all the other buttons had to go on another side. The tie had to be a certain way. And so every night he would wake up around 8 o'clock, and he would lay his shirt out. He had a fresh shirt, and my job was to put on all the little badges and the buttons and to get his shirt ready for wearing. I loved that responsibility. I did not want him to dress his own shirts. That was my job, and so I loved doing it. He had his break time was at 3 a.m. every morning, and there were times when I would get up with him at 3 a.m. And he always had a sandwich. He liked a bologna sandwich, and so my job was to fix his bologna sandwich. He rarely talked about anything that was happening, because most of the times, unfortunately, it was negative news and sometimes very fearful, and he did not want to frighten us. But there were moments when good things happened, when they would rescue someone or be able to save someone from a drowning or something of that nature. There would be accidents sometimes, and they were able to get people out of cars in time, or offer CPR or something in time. So occasionally he would talk about that, but when he came home, he wanted it to be happy time. But my fondest memories are me being able and having the honor of preparing his shirts. And I have the shirt, the last shirt that he wore before he retired. I have it at the house, and it's still real special to me. On March 6, 1964, Dr. King spoke at Tinker Field in Orlando. It was the only time he made a live appearance here in Orlando. During the day, he met with the pastor of Shiloh Baptist Church, and Dr. King held a workshop, and they talked about things that they could do for voting. Dr. King also met with many city officials to talk about his purpose for being here. Dr. King had a full day that day. He had 2 workshops at Shiloh Baptist Church, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, all with strategies, discussing strategies with the NAACP, CORE, various black agencies and groups that were interested in voting. Dr. King met with everybody and anybody he could to develop voting nonviolent strategies. That evening, Dr. King spoke at Tinker Field, and it was that evening that my dad, Richard Arthur Jones, was assigned to be his bodyguard because my dad was a policeman. And he was assigned to be the bodyguard of Dr. King. And that evening, right prior to the rally, my family received notice that there had been some threats given at the police station regarding the safety of Dr. King. And so we decided we were going to go anyway. So nothing happened. It was a beautiful rally. Dr. King gave one of the best speeches ever. My dad stood proudly next to him out at the stadium. He was in full view, and Dr. King spoke basically on nonviolent, the importance and the significance of remaining nonviolent. And Dr. King really emphasized all of the points, the pros and cons of voting versus not voting. And he made sure we understood that if we did not vote, there was no way that the blacks could gain the civil rights, freedoms, and rights that we were working so hard for. Dr. King made a significant impact on our lives that evening when he spoke to us, and it was the most memorable speech I've ever heard. I'm glad to also say I attended his funeral in Atlanta. I went to school in Clark, Atlanta, and when he was assassinated in 1968, that was my junior year there too, and I was privileged to attend his services and see him in a full glass casket on the Morehouse campus in Atlanta. So I'm proud to say that I heard Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King, in Orlando at Tinker Field, but also attended his services in Atlanta, Georgia. And of course, I've gone several times to his monument in Washington, D.C., which is earth-moving. Yes, I've met his children as well. I didn't get a chance to meet Coretta, but I did get a chance to meet his children, and I have been to his library and tombstone, his burial as well. My family started talking about voting for the first time, and we as a neighborhood tried to figure out what can we do. It's like, what can we do now? We heard this man, we heard the charge, what should we do next? So at all of our churches, the impact was, we're going to start talking about it in church. We're going to get church members to make commitments to vote. We're going to help them understand the the requirements for voting. We're going to help them with transportation to the polls. The impact was take action, do something. Don't just sit around and say, okay, we'll vote. No, we have to do more. We go door to door and get people registered. And we want everyone to know what the criteria is for voting so that when it's time, you'll be there, you'll make the commitment to vote and get everybody you know, family and friends, to make the commitment and the pledge to go and vote and be heard. And it made a difference. The impact truly made a difference. That was as a result, all as a result of Dr. King's speech. I see the results. And the more I listen to politics, the more I listen to political rhetoric, the more I see what's going on, the more I'm motivated to go to the polls. And I know the significance, the impact, the importance of voting is one of the most powerful things we can do. And I just absolutely refuse to allow that right to be taken from me. And I get very upset when I see different kinds of laws implemented that work against voting. When I see and hear that we can't give a chair or a glass of water to a person that's waiting in line, or that the hours for voting are being reduced, that the early voting time periods are being changed and reduced, that there are fewer and fewer places where you can drop your vote in early, or that the requirements for requesting vote by mail are changed. All of these things disturb me greatly. So all it does is just encourage me to do more, to work harder. I'm a member of 3 different organizations that advocate voting and getting information out, all as a result of things that I hear and see happening that are anti-voting and that do not encourage mainly people of color to go to the polls. So it just means we have to work a lot harder because we are not going to give up. I stay active because I enjoy talking about our civil rights. I enjoy being able to share with young people our history. You know, I remember many of the tragic things that happened in my youth while people were trying to just vote or go to a restaurant or sit down at a lunch counter. I remember some of the tragic things that happened. So this makes it very easy for me to be continuously charged and motivated to, and even an obligation to get people to get involved, to be involved, to stay involved, so that our country will continue to be free. We deserve the right to have the same rights and the same privileges, which is what Dr. King said. He believed in equality for all people, not just one race, for all people. And we want to continue his struggle. So I will always remain as active as I possibly can, in the words of Dr. King, to continue always committed to fight for the struggle, to fight for our rights, and to fight for the things that our country and our Constitution guarantees us. One of the things that I am so proud to say that I did was become involved with the Mayor's Martin Luther King Commission. I have been on the Mayor's MLK Commission for at least 25 years. And when they said that it was, the purpose was to carry out the mission of Dr. M.L. King, I immediately became interested and was excited to get involved. We state the mission at every meeting. Every time the committee meets, the MLK Commission meets, we reiterate the mission of Dr. King so that we stay focused every single year. Funds are raised so that we can continue to keep our community aware of not only the life of Dr. King, but his theme in brotherhood and love, equality. And we want to continue bringing that before the faces of the citizens of Orlando so that his legacy will never die. That's the whole purpose of having the holiday. And the commission does a phenomenal job of hosting activities so that we can keep Dr. King's missions before the eyes of the public. I'm extremely proud that we have an emphasis on the students. We call them humanitarians. A student from each of our high schools, and at first from elementary and high school, a student from each of these schools is honored, not because they're popular, which they are, not because they are high achievers, which they are, not because they are involved in so many activities, but because they live out the word humanitarian. Their character is what we emphasize. We all know that Dr. King stated, "I want my 4 little children to be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." And so through our humanitarian efforts, we are able to emphasize and let the whole school and the whole city and everyone know how important it is to have good character. And I tell you, if you hear the bios of the students that we honor, you would be amazed at how involved these young kids are in the community. They volunteer at agencies, they volunteer at many charities, they give, they work. They're doing so many things to help the community and to help those in need. So we honor them, and I was blessed with the opportunity to plan the first 10 humanitarian programs. And they're so well done. The programs really show and highlight and showcase those students. There's a banquet, and in the parade they wear their t-shirts, and they are highlighted at a Magic game. They get to go out on center court, and they're highlighted there. And so there's much publicity about them. We let them know how much character development means in implementing the ideals of Dr. King, and we let them know how important what their work is doing is, how important it is in our community, and we want to encourage them to continue. They get scholarships, they get books. We give as much as we possibly can because this is a rare opportunity to recognize a student for simply having great character. So how could I not be on the MLK Commission? I will work with the commission, the Mayor's MLK Commission, as long as I possibly can, and anything else that I can do to foster the ideals of his teachings. I would like to simply be remembered as being a good person. I just hope that people will see the good in me. If that's all they say, I'm happy. I like to see people smile. And so if I can bring a smile to anyone on any given day. I have a motto, make somebody's day every day. And every day should be filled with sunshine. So I try to, because a lot of times you can do something that costs money. You can say, wow, you look nice today. Oh, you have a beautiful smile. Or just, how you doing? Just, can I help you across the street? Can I help you with your baggage, your purse, your luggage, your groceries? Sometimes just offering to help someone means a lot to people. People want to be thought about. But if they can just say she was a good person, I'll be happy. I believe as a librarian, as a reader, I could not think of what our world would be like without libraries. The enjoyment and the freedom to be able to read whatever we want to read just makes my heart happy. I just get all kinds of chills when I hear sanctions being proposed about the kinds of books that can be purchased or displayed in our libraries. And I'm hoping that does not come to fruition. I just feel like I'm so happy people are reading. Let them read whatever they want to, and that's what we were taught in school. So if a child is not a reader, you start them with a comic book, and you start them on a subject that they like. The first kid that I taught that hated to read loved rocks. He was a collector of rocks. Well, guess what book I got for him? And he had no idea that there were books about rocks. Next thing I know, this kid is going to be a scientist because he found profound interest in rocks, and he did it through his reading. We just have no idea how many doors we can open when we introduce children to reading. I have 2 granddaughters that, bless their hearts, they had 500 books when they were born, because Grandma bought books. And then, of course, we went to the library and checked out and got library cards. But I just think a whole different world exists because of libraries. And libraries today are not what libraries were when I was a kid or when I first started. Libraries back in the day when I first started, you had to be quiet, and it was basically research. You had to know the Dewey Decimal System, the backwards and forwards, and we were assistants only for people who were looking for something specific. Now, libraries are real centers, they're media centers. Now people come in with computers and there's story time and researching and just enjoyment. You can talk and laugh in a library now. It's a place for fun. It's a place for families. And that was not encouraged during my time when I started in the library. There are libraries with cafes. You can have a snack. You can enjoy yourself. You can spend the day at the library and not get bored, not one bit. And so we have so much more to offer than books. There are, cassette tapes and puppet shows and, I mean, just everything. Because of my love of voting, I asked to be assigned at a library. So my voting poll place, I worked all 14 days this past election, was in the library. I had a ball. I couldn't believe I could enjoy both, being at the library all day, 14 days straight in a row, and working the polls. It was such a pleasure to see families come in. The first day I was in the library, they did bubbles. Bubbles everywhere. I can't wait now to go get my grandkids, bubble machines. The library just introduces a whole new world. It expands your thinking. It expands your life as an individual. My first adventures with travel were in the library. And as a result, I took my middle school son to Europe because of the library. He wanted to see the Mona Lisa. He wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. He wanted to see Big Ben. He wanted to sail the Seine. And so I said, okay. So we read and we read and we read, but the only way to see it was to go there. But it started in the library. So I feel that the library just opens a whole new world. And not to mention, there were scholars there. There are all kinds of tax people now are in the library researching new tax laws. there are all kinds of careers that are started in the library. I don't know, we couldn't function without the library. So the impact of the library is phenomenal. The community branches do such a great job for individuals who can't make it down to the main library. And the online services are incredible. My first computer course was at the library. So I don't know very much now that the library doesn't do, and there are all kinds of libraries all over the world. I've seen a variety of libraries, and it's amazing the various classes that are offered. Just about anything you want to know more about is held at one time or another at the library. Even community meetings are held in the library. Entertainment takes place in the library. You name it. It happens at the library, and so many times it's free. I'm so proud and happy that I started my interest in all of my activities at the first Black branch in the Washington Shores community here in Orlando, and that it was because of my participation in my activities at the Orlando Public Library that I continued my career and was able to get a master's degree in library science. So I feel that I owe a great deal of my achievements to Orlando Public Library, and I am thrilled to be able to say that. And I just renewed my card while I was working the polls at the library, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it, and I'll have my grands at the library here. They live in another state, but they like the Orlando Public Library better. And I said, I know why.